So this is our Acclivity Zilla platform Quickstart uh, documentation. It's step-by-step instructions that you can run for yourself on your own system. We provide a Docker Compose stack for you to run to get started. So if you just copy the Docker Compose command line there and run it, it will start pulling the images and it will get everything up and running. The architecture of Zilla platform has three different aspects to it. It has the management plane, where we control it from the user experience. It has the control plane, which makes sure that where you register intent about what you want to deploy and things like that. And then there's the data plane, which is uh, basically your own environment, which is where your Kafka might live or your schema registry might live, and also where the Zilla platform gateways live to connect back into the platform. So in order to do that, we need to have an environment created in Zilla platform, which is created automatically when we run this quick start Docker Compose stack. And when we go in here, we can register as an administrator for first-time user. And it's compatible with your favorite password manager, so you can populate your passwords and have strong passwords and use them to log into the system. So once that is created, you can see that we already have a quick start environment available. Now we want to attach a data plane from one of the gateways, dialing back home into the platform to bootstrap and represent that environment. So you might have different environments for development or for staging or for production. And in this case, we're creating a local file to make that a little bit easier for the compose commands and copying in some content which references the OCI uh, Docker Compose stack for the environment. Then we need to get the bootstrap token that will authorize access from the environment for the gateway dialing home to participate in the platform. And we just start up the environment Docker Compose stack with the gateway. You can also see that it's starting a few other things like schema registry and Kafka. And we have some init containers in here to automatically populate some topics and schemas and things to make it so it's not empty when you try it out through the quick start user experience in a moment. So once that Kafka initialization completes, then we're in a position to um, uh, show that through the user experience. So here we are in browsing into the environment with the Quick Start Kafka, where you can see information about the brokers and the topics that are in Kafka, also the schemas that are in there. We also have support for observing the consumer groups and ACLs and quotas as well. So now, now that we've attached our environment, we have a running Kafka and schema registry in there, we're going to create an async API specification by extracting it from that environment. So we go into the workspace and the project, and we create a new async API specification. This is going to be based on the orders created topic. So we're going to call that orders.asyncAPI.yaml. And we're going to select our quick start environment and then our quick start Kafka that was run inside the data plane there for the environment, and then the topic orders created to create the async API specification. And as we look at a specification here, you can see this is pretty recognizable if you've seen async API before. We've got orders created channel representing the topic with messages on there, and the message has a orders created message that has three properties: order ID, status, and timestamp, and all three of those are required. And that's going to be important to remember for later steps. So now that we've created the async API specification, now it's time to actually create an API product from that. So we go into the catalog, quick start catalog here, and create a new API product. And that API product is for the orders API. And we're going to create that based on the async API specification that we just extracted called orders. And then in the next step, we're associating the server name that should be used for that. So this is the name representing what will be deployed later on. This is the staging server name. So it's staging.platform.net on port 9094. And once we create this, then we associate a plan for things like security and for rate limiting to be associated with that to create the API product. So now we've created our API product in the system, but it's not actually deployed anywhere. So if we click on the deployments here, we can see that there are no current deployments. So let's go ahead and deploy it. And when we deploy it, we need to, we'll give it a name, but we'll also say which server that we want to deploy. In this case, it's the staging one. And we're going to deploy that into our Quickstart environment in front of the Kafka that's in there. And that gets deployed pretty quickly and causes the gateway to be automatically configured. You can see we now have a deployment active in that environment. And so now that we've got that created and deployed, now we need to be able to access it as a client. So we need to create something that represents the client application, and then we're going to subscribe to that specific API product so we have credentials to be able to access it in a way that is authorized. So we select the orders API and which version that we want to subscribe to. And when we subscribe, we have to say whether we're the API provider or the API consumer. The API consumer is the normal view that you might associate with other things like REST APIs, where the client is a sort of a consumer of the API. The API provider, in this case, because it's Kafka-based, has to have greater privileges, be able to produce into topics that API consumers might only be able to fetch from, for example. And so they have greater privileges. So we're going to demonstrate both produce and consume or produce and fetch via the command line tools here. So we've decided to show this by subscribing as an API provider. So now we need to get the credentials and use them on the command line. So we set a couple of environment variables based on what we were told here from the subscription. The API key you can reobtain pretty easily. The secret key is only presented when you initially subscribe, so you have to make sure to store that somewhere secret and safe to be able to use it. In this case, we're putting in an environment variable for the command line tools to pick up. So the first thing we want to do is produce a valid message into Kafka. You can see from the command line here, we're just running the standard tools for Kafka console producer to do that. We're hitting a bootstrap server on staging.platform.net 9094 there, which is hitting the gateway. And as you can see, everything went through successfully. No errors coming back from the command line tools. And if we go over to the Quickstart environment and browse into the Quickstart Kafka and go to the topic where we produce the message, and you'll be able to see that the message successfully shows up with the content that we produced. There we go. So now that we've seen that, let's also make sure we can consume it through the gateway with the API key and secret key that we had used earlier. So now we're able to use the standard Kafka console consumer tools and fetch the message that you saw just a moment ago through the UX. So that's working as expected, valid message in, valid message out. But so far we haven't demonstrated that the validation is actually happening because it could be letting everything in. So in this case, we're going to produce produce an invalid message and show that it got rejected. So here we're producing a message in a similar way to the first one, except that if you look at the echo part where we're putting the payload, we do have two fields, but we don't have the third one for the timestamp. And as mentioned earlier, all three were required by the async API spec. And so here, as we enforce it, that's being rejected by the gateway so that you cannot get an invalid message into the topic. And we're just going to produce one more message into the topic. This time is another valid message, but we'll make it have a slightly different order ID so that we can tell those apart more easily. So we'll make that 456. And then you'll see that this produces successfully with no errors coming back. And if we go with the consumer, we're going to fetch the messages, but we're going to fetch them from the beginning. So here we can see that the two messages are both showing up. And we'll just head over to the environment and browse in there to show that even though we attempted to produce an invalid message between the two valid messages, only the two valid messages are present in the top